What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It is time. We are finally here. It is my number one team in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive series going into this season. The best team in football, the San Francisco 49ers. Oh, man. What a series. It was a lot of fun to put together for you guys, and I appreciate everyone for watching as many of the videos as you could. Leaving your comments in the comment section, but don't give up on this one. This one is the big one, and leave your comments in the comment section below, and thumbs up the video and subscribe to the channel, and just as a thumbs up for all the hard work that this was. It was a lot. It was a ton. It's a lot of hours, like 25 to 30 hours worth of content rolled up here, and that doesn't account for the work done behind the scenes to actually do the gradings and all that. And this is one of those teams where I was actually sort of surprised by the grades that I gave out to them. You'll see it as we go along with some of these player positional groups. And I was more amazed by the type of roster they've been able to forge and put together and how complete it really is. And in talent for talent, there's just nobody better. There isn't. The way the coaching staff of Kyle Shanahan, the way he's put together his staff, the way that he's, streamlined, promoting guys more so than hiring from outside has really helped keep a consistency in the locker room and in training camps and in OTAs and all the most important things that allow guys to truly grow as players. And he's done it with guys who he's taken, in the second round, like Deebo Samuel, I believe in the fourth round, like George Kittle, who, fullbacks like Kyle Juszczyk, who he's brought in, older veterans like Trent Williams, who's an elite level player. I don't want to get that twisted. Not like Kyle Shanahan made him, but Kyle Shanahan did give an extra boost to his game the same way he did with Christian McCaffrey. And, who can forget Brock Purdy, your mystery relevant, is like a top 15 quarterback in the NFL now. Just playing great football, playing out of his mind since day one. It doesn't really account for what he's done on the defense side of the ball, getting all these great defensive coordinators, head coaching jobs, and still maintaining some of the best defensive players in the entire league. It's just a tremendous group. And what is missing, though? Because I believe that last year they were my number one team as well. And they got to the Super Bowl and they lost Andy Reid again. What's missing? It's hard to put your finger on what's truly missing here. And as you guys get into the player grades, I think you're going to be asking the same question. I don't understand how this team hasn't won 6 Super Bowls in a row. Because this has been pretty much the roster for the last couple of years. I know Brock Purdy got hurt and that kind of screwed up their playoff run 2 years ago. And I know that there was questionable decisions made by the officiating crew in the Super Bowl that may or may not have given more opportunities to the Kansas City Chiefs than maybe they should have gotten. But those are hardly reasonable excuses to use. And I don't like necessarily using them outside of in the moment when you see them. So I do wonder what's missing, and maybe it's something that's missing with this coaching staff that we'll talk about now. So this is my tied for 4th coaching staff in the league, and we'll start with Kyle Shanahan, who is my number 2 head coach in the entire league. And the only reason he's not number 1 is because he's 0 for 2 in the Super Bowl against Andy Reid, who is my number 1 head coach in the league. That's the only his inability to outcoach Andy Reid in the Super Bowl is the only reason why he's number 2 and not number 1. Andy Reid is the only coach he can seemingly not outcoach in any situation, in any game. And then, that's really that's the separation. Now, you have Chris Forrester, who's sort of I guess you could call him the stand-in as the offensive coordinator. This is a unique situation that not a lot of other teams have, where they don't really have an offensive coordinator. The offensive coordinator is also Kyle Shanahan, which is why they're also ranked 2nd for offensive coordinator. It's his show. Now, he's put together a staff of assistants and positional coaches that make sure that everything runs in congruity while he oversees the entire show. But game day, the main focus of Kyle Shanahan is the offense. And I would say probably during a lot of the weekly preparations, it's the offense as well. He's the guy that calls the plays. He's the guy that sets everything. So you have Chris Forrester, who is their run game coordinator and their offensive line coach. And that's why I really feature him in this photograph, I guess you can say. Because this offense, the Shanahan offense, really operates off of the run game initially and on the play of the offensive line and how the offensive line sets up gaps and stuff in this zone offense. And, you know, Chris Forrester has done a great job since coming over to the team. I believe he got there in 2018. I believe he came over with Shanahan. I believe that is what when he came over. He was a consultant for a while. He took over the offensive line in 2021 when they had Trent Williams, Laken Thompson, and Alex Mack all make the Pro Bowl. And since then, they've lost some pretty significant talent on the offensive line, particularly Mack and Tomlinson, who was really at his best with the 49ers. They kept Trent Williams, who they just extended. But what Forrester's been able to do as the offensive line coach is take some lesser than talents, as you're going to see when we see these guys get graded out, like an Aaron Banks, like Colton McKivitz, like Spencer Burford. He really did a great job helping develop Jake Brendel. He's done as good of a job as any offensive line coach in terms of not necessarily making guys these truly elite level performers the way that we saw with the Raiders last year. But he utilizes the skill sets of these players and puts them in a position where the offense can truly execute itself properly. And him also being the run game coordinator, I think also helps with how he puts together his offensive line and who he plays on which side of the field in terms of the guards, who he plugs in at the tackle opposite of Trent Williams. I think all that comes into play. His assistant is Cameron Clemens. So I think that's somebody who I believe on more of a daily basis will be more involved in the offensive line, as Forrester more so oversees, you know, his responsibilities as run game coordinator and the offensive line coach. Then you got Brian Fleury, who's the tight ends coach. Joe Graves is another assistant offensive line coach they have. So they have two assistant offensive line coaches. So there's a lot of focus put in on how this offensive line plays, which is another reason why I think Forrester being the one that's featured is important. You look at the quarterbacks coach, they got Brian Greasy, the wide receivers coach, Leonard Hankerson. They got Jordan Hogan, who's an offensive coach, just basically an assistant. Mick Lombardi is another one. He's got some experience in the league. Miguel Reveles, Alsani Rufus, Deuce Schwartz. They've got some Robert Turner Jr. They've really put a lot of guys in place in these types of consultant roles to, I think, also be of service to Kyle Shanahan at times when he does have to go and put some focus on the defensive side. Now, this is the third defensive coordinator they've had in 3 years. They had D'Amico Ryans, they had Steve Weish, and now they have Nick Sorensen, who just got promoted after spending, I believe, 2 or 3 years here as just a defensive assistant. He was a passing game coordinator. And they did bring in former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley to basically be the assistant head coach, and he's also the assistant defensive coordinator. So I think that's mostly just for this 1 year as sort of a stand-in to help bring Nick Sorensen along, because it is a significant jump for him to go from just like a nickel. He was like a nickel back positions coach, like very specific specialty to cover there. And then he was just really a consultant and a defensive assistant, general defensive assistant to Steve Weish. So getting the experience of Brandon Staley in there. And I do think Brandon Staley does have something to offer, at least on the defensive side. What he failed to offer as a head coach, I think he makes up for as the defensive assistant. So I think that does help boost up Nick Sorensen's overall grade. But it's also another one of those scenarios where they really did give a lot of credence to the positional coaches. It really is a collaborative effort with these quote-unquote coordinators and their position coaches that's completely overseen by Kyle Shanahan. Some examples of that, you got Cameron Brown, defensive quality control coach. Daniel Bullocks, he coaches the defensive backs. You got Andrew Hayes-Stoker, the assistant defensive backs coach. Johnny Holland, the linebackers coach. Chris Couric, the defensive line coach. You have Max Moltz, who's a coaching operations assistant there with some defensive work mostly. You got Jacob Webster, defensive quality control coach as well. And then KJ Wright, another defensive quality control coach. So they have a bunch of quality control coaches that exist here on the defensive side. And I think that's mostly to, again, just make it more of a collaboration. So that's why it's kind of also hard to really rank Nick Sorensen at all, because it's almost like he's been handed the keys to the castle. You know, I've used a couple baseball references. It's like, you know, we're letting you go out to the mound, but, you know, we're pulling you after 60 pitches. It's not the most ideal situation. Now, it's also not thrusting him into like these high pressure situations. You know, you surround him with quality control coaches who can keep track of a lot of things for him and help him along the way, and takes away a lot of I think it takes the pressure off in a lot of ways for Sorensen. And I do think that there will be struggles here. He is the worst defensive coordinator they've had in a long time in terms of at least his ranking. And I do think that there will be some type of suffrage that comes from that. But with how great the offensive side is and how much focus the offense gets, as we get into these player grades, you're going to see there is so much talent on the offensive side. The defense really just needs to just do its part and let its best players do what they do best, and everything will be fine. There's almost too much talent here for Sorensen to screw it up anyway. So it's mostly just, you know, focusing in on his job, doing what Kyle Shanahan needs him to do, and then really taking in and listening to his quality control coaches, positional coaches, and especially Brandon Staley, who's got all that experience. And I think that will help elevate him slowly. I don't think they're looking for that top 10 defensive coordinator here, or they would have gone out and gotten one. So I think keeping it in-house helps maintain a sense of continuity for a lot of the players for a defense that has worked since Robert Saleh was the defensive coordinator, you know, years ago. Let's talk about the quarterback here. It's Brock Purdy, the Mr. Irrelevant, tied for 14th for me in terms of quarterback ranking here. He gets an 87 grade. He's everything that this offense requires. You know, Jimmy Garoppolo really fit what Kyle Shanahan wanted to do, but he didn't have like that next gear really. And I think that when they brought in Brock Purdy, the idea was to, I think when they drafted him, to maybe just mold him into being like the Jimmy Garoppolo, while Trey Lance would be set up to be like that next level franchise style quarterback. And then Brock Purdy just played out of his mind when he got the opportunity that he did. And I think he showed that he not only can game manage the way that they were wanting Jimmy Garoppolo to do it, especially that year they went to the Super Bowl, he was able to get to that next gear and get to that next level. He's not afraid to push the ball down the field. You know, he's very calm under pressure. He trusts the process and the system. He understands the progressions. He understands where that first and second read needs to be in terms of what he does pre-snap with the defense and post-snap with the defense. He understands where his offensive linemen are going to be, so he knows exactly where to step up. He does such an amazing job operating within this offense. He really is the perfect quarterback for this offense. Now, obviously, would you want somebody with the talent of Patrick Mahomes here? Obviously. But I don't think they're not going to be exactly rushing to try and find a replacement the way they did with Garoppolo. I think they're very satisfied with Purdy, and I think that he's shown that he is capable of raising up that level of play to make him like a top 10 quarterback certain weeks of the year. But the other thing about Purdy is he's never really ever played like less than the 15th best quarterback in the NFL on a week to week basis. And I think that's really important. That high floor is really important. He's got a really high floor. Doesn't necessarily have the highest ceiling because he doesn't have the arm talent that you like in guys like Mahomes and Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow and Caleb Williams. But he has such tremendous accuracy in the short to intermediate routes, which is where this offense really loves to live. He's not afraid to check it down, and he's not afraid on those third down situations to push the ball towards the sticks, which is why he can elevate himself in this overall grading. I think when you have these game manager type quarterbacks, you'll see a lot of the time they won't necessarily attack the sticks on third down or even on second down. Brock Purdy will attack the sticks on second and third down, which is a rare thing for a guy who sort of does fall under the game manager category. You know, pressing the sticks on second and third down is a trait of a elite level quarterback. That's usually the thing that they talk about that separates the elite quarterbacks from the great quarterbacks. Like there's that tier, that drop tier, is they have all the arm talent, but they press the sticks. They get aggressive. The other ones kind of play it safe more often than they should. Brock Purdy doesn't have the arm talent, but he attacks the first down marker by going after his plethora of weapons, and he trusts all these guys, and he actually has helped a guy like Brandon Ayuk actually kind of grow as a player. I think Ayuk was always sort of going to be on that trajectory, but I do think that Brock Purdy has given him that little extra bit that put him into that like true number one receiver category that he was sort of just hovering below for a while there behind Debo. And I think he's truly taken over as that number one guy. And I think it's because of the way that Brock Purdy puts all that trust in him and is willing to put the ball up for him and trust that he's going to be able to get the separation and throws with great anticipation. And then with George Kittle, he knows how to use George Kittle really well. And he's also not afraid to use Christian McCaffrey need be, understanding that McCaffrey is an elite and special talent, which we'll get to very shortly. They brought in Josh Dobbs to be the backup, and Dobbs had that first half of the season last year where he was all of a sudden some top star playing quarterback. I think that was more of a testament to Kevin O'Connell than it was necessarily Josh Dobbs. Sorry, not Kevin O'Connell. To the fact that the Arizona Cardinals were so incredibly terrible that no one really took them seriously. And then Kevin O'Connell saw that and went, give me that guy while my quarterback is out and I can make something out of him. And he did a good job of sort of keeping Minnesota's head above water for perhaps longer than people expected them to without having Kirk Cousins and even Justin Jefferson for, I believe, some of the season. He was out as well. Brandon Allen has sort of been a mainstay here. He'll be the third string emergency quarterback. I think I would anticipate that perhaps maybe if there was some sort of long-term need for a quarterback, Brandon Allen wouldn't get the job over Josh Dobbs. I don't know. I think that's something interesting to think about. But Brock Purdy really bounced back well from his injury that he suffered 2 years ago. He had a really great season, and he's somebody who, because of how he plays the game and because he is so safe with the football, he doesn't necessarily put the ball in harm's way all that often, and he has gotten better with every season. There's really no reason with the way this offense is structured that he wouldn't find himself in the MVP conversation by the end of the year, especially if he can catch fire with the weapons, and if Deebo Samuel can stay healthy, it really opens the game up. And I think if they play maybe perhaps a more aggressive passing style this year, that Brock Purdy could get to that level and they could manufacture an MVP season out of him. I don't know if he's ever going to be considered a true top 5 quarterback in the NFL, but I mean, he is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, and I think he's proven that since he's gotten the opportunities in San Francisco from his rookie season. Now we're going to just talk about the most exceptionally special player in the entire NFL, and it's Christian McCaffrey. Just by the way that my graphics are designed, I do talk about the backups. Let's run through the backups quickly. Isaac Guriendo is thrust into perhaps getting a little bit more playing time with Elijah Mitchell on the injured reserve list. Elijah Mitchell was a top-level backup, probably the best number 2 running back in the entire league, sort of crashed behind Christian McCaffrey, who, yes, is my number 1 running back in the league. I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities here on early downs, and as just a direct backup as the season goes on. Jordan Mason and Patrick Taylor have some more experience here, but let's go and talk about the real star here. The guy who's given white running backs a hope, and perhaps has given white corners a hope too, with all the ones that have been drafted lately. Christian McCaffrey, by my estimation, the best pure running back in the entire league. You can turn around, hand him the football on 1st and 2nd down. He understands what the offensive scheme is. He understands the responsibility of the offensive line, and he's got tremendous vision. And not only does he have tremendous vision, he hits the hole with such confidence and such suddenness. He has this tremendous acceleration, even at this stage in his career where he's picked up a lot of injuries in Carolina. And people were kind of expecting that he was kind of done, and then he got here and he just blew right back up and actually got better than what he was at his peak. And at his peak, people were saying he was amongst the best running backs in the league. And he's long surpassed what people originally thought his peak was during this time in Carolina. He hits the hole with such confidence. He's able to make linebackers miss in a hole. He can make moves in a phone booth. Like, it's amazing to watch. And he still has the straight line speed to be able to beat defensive backs once he gets to that level. And he still has a suddenness, a quickness, the straight line speed. And he's great even getting through contact, which you wouldn't expect from a guy who is certainly most definitely a more finesse player, and definitely somebody he's not exactly Derrick Henry in stature either. And boosting it forward, the one thing that he also really brings to the game, like this is the big part of his game that he really improved on since he got to San Francisco. He was never ranked like this as a just turn around and hand the ball off running back. You know, between the tackles running back. He wasn't this guy in Carolina. He was maybe closer to what you would have graded, like, I don't know, maybe Tony Pollard as a 1st and 2nd down running back during his time in Carolina. And people were like, that's good enough for me. Kyle Shanahan took him to a whole other level. Perfect guy for the scheme. Perfect guy for the offense. And what also really makes him perfect is he is bringing over that great receiving ability, where he's also the best receiving back in the league as well. And this one is not even close. I think it's impossible to argue that this is even close. Nobody runs the screen pass better than him. No running back has the route tree that he has. No running back has the hands that he has. No running back has the ability in the open field after a catch to make guys miss the way that he does. He is a truly special talent in so many ways, and this may be his best feature somehow. You go back and you look at some of the great receiving threats out of the backfield in NFL history. You immediately go to Marshall Faulk. You go to LaDainian Tomlinson. They weren't as good at their peak as Christian McCaffrey is at his. Now, I argue to this day that LaDainian Tomlinson is a top 5 running back all time. I think that, in a year or two, it'll be impossible to argue that Christian McCaffrey isn't a top 5 running back of all time because of how unique he is, number one, and the fact that you can't find anyone in the game that's better than him at any aspect of playing running back, even by a modern day style and modern day standards. The matchup nightmare that he becomes, and yes, losing Elijah Mitchell actually does hurt in a little bit of a degree here. It definitely affects certain strategies and formations they would run in games, which is something we talked about in the previous video with the Lions and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Is you put Christian McCaffrey, you can split him out receiver, and you'd have Elijah Mitchell as the running back. And then you run McCaffrey in motion. You would actually have him out there playing a slot receiver role, running routes, and just creating all these matchup difficulties, having to move linebackers out of the box or safeties out of the box to then account for Christian McCaffrey. Or you have to put a corner on Christian McCaffrey. And then if you run a good enough tunnel screen there, that defensive back is not bringing him down. That defensive back is not going to have the anticipation levels to get around a George Kittle going out there to block. And if he does, he's not going to bring down Christian McCaffrey in the open field. So there's extreme matchup issues here. And I think that as they figure out who the true backup is going to be here between Goriendo, Mason, and Taylor, they may settle back into that and just plug one of these guys into the Elijah Mitchell role. But Elijah Mitchell was special in the fact that he was a starting caliber running back. So putting in like a true backup quality back, I think would change the way that the defense would be playing in those scenarios. So I think it sort of takes it out of play. I do think you'll see a lot more of Deebo Samuel perhaps now lining up in the backfield more often with Elijah Mitchell now out, and McCaffrey running out, lining up at receiver, and then mixing in those different formation combinations to try and get defenses confused. Kyle Shanahan loves to be creative in those ways, and I think he'll still find a way to do that, but he's doing it with the truly elite weapon in the NFL, and it's magic to watch. And it's unfortunate that he would have to run for 2,000 yards and score 20 touchdowns in order for him to even be considered for MVP. But if we're talking about just truly the best player in the league, it's hard to argue that it's not him, that it's not Christian McCaffrey. Moving on to the weapons now, the wide receivers, tight ends. Start with the wide receiver room. They are the 5th wide receiver room in the NFL. I made a video with the Pittsburgh Steelers arguing if Brandon Ayuk went there, what that would look like. Well, he's not going anywhere. He's staying right here with the 49ers, and boy, is him and Deebo one heck of a combination. Brandon Ayuk is a great route runner. He's much more physical than you'd expect. He's a lot faster in game than you would expect him to be. He's just really continued to develop, and he's really played up to that first round level talent. I think he's earned, to be paid as one of the best receivers in the league. And I think his relationship with Brock Purdy, as it continues to grow, I think they're going to help elevate each other even further than they already have. Deebo Samuel is your perfect, all-purpose player. He's sort of the wide receiver version of Christian McCaffrey, where Christian McCaffrey is mostly a running back with great receiving ability. Deebo Samuel is like this really great receiver with very dangerous abilities to play, a running back role and to line up in the backfield, run out in motion, take a reverse, take an end around, take a handoff between the tackles. And he attacks gaps and holes in the defense and uses his blockers in the open field like a running back does. And you've seen a lot of people get compared to him that have come into the league lately. It really speaks to how unique the skill set is. And he's the first of what I think a lot of teams are going to have been looking for I look at the New York Jets getting Malachi Corley. They're going to be looking to use him the way that Deebo Samuel is used. The skill sets are very similar, and I think that Deebo really opened up the eyes of the NFL. He's one of those talents who I think a lot of people maybe didn't know what to do with him. I think the 49ers picked him up and were kind of like, okay, what do we use him as? He's a second-round pick. Like, what do we do with him? Try to figure out what role to play with him. And it really worked out, and I think that is now going to help out a lot of players that are just like him. Sort of the opposite of what happened with Isaiah Simmons, who was sort of in the same vein there, but they never really found a role. He never really excelled in any role, so that kind of took away from similar college players that were similar to Isaiah Simmons from them being looked at as high-level draft picks. I think the exact opposite is happening with Deebo Samuel here. Juwan Jennings is like a sneaky good wide receiver 3 here. Had a great Super Bowl, and he's that wide receiver that, you won't hear about him for 4 or 5 weeks at a time, and then he'll just have this monster game where he's running great routes, he's playing super physical in the run game, physical in the open field when he catches the ball, really strong hands, and he puts up a couple touchdowns and 100 yards in a game. And then he'll disappear for another 5 weeks. He's a really great player to have out there. He's really fun to watch when he's actually a part of the game plan. It's just there's so many mouths to feed on this offense that it's just hard to get him involved as much as, he might get involved with another team. But I don't know that he would have the performances that he has when he has them here on another team, because they just wouldn't have the plethora of weapons to open up those opportunities for him. Going to the depth here, and I'd be remiss to not say, hey Alexa, play Many Men by 50 Cent, because Ricky Pearsall is a badass. For those of you that don't know, the other day he got shot in the chest. And he's already out of the hospital and back at the facility working out with the team. To say a guy has street cred now, I criticized the hell out of this pick when they made it. I thought it was a giant reach. He does only get a 68 grade for me, and that stands. I'm not going to all of a sudden grade him as a 99 because, he's apparently Batman. But, boy, to have that type of guy in the locker room, to go through that, to come back like he has already, talk about what that can do for a locker room, man. Accidentally spending your first round pick on a guy who can give that to your locker room is one of the best accidents that have ever happened to a roster, despite something nearly tragic truly happening. And it's an absolute relief, obviously, that he's okay outside of football, everything like that. But his comeback, man, you talk about comeback player of the year, he might have already won it. He was drafted suspiciously, though. I guess there was the talks of them losing either Ayuk or Deebo Samuel around that draft time. So I guess drafting him in the first round was, let's get the receiver that we really like as this backup plan. And now he's the ultimate backup plan because he won't have to play. He wasn't going to play a whole lot early this season anyway. So the near tragedy that happened with him is almost inconsequential now. It's going to give him even more time to sort of get himself ready. There's a lot less pressure on him to get on the field than there would have been otherwise, even though I'm sure nobody would be pressuring him to get on the field after that. But I could see him, eventually, halfway through the season getting worked in. And it does kind of put Juwan Jennings' role in question here. I think him and Ricky Pearsall would eventually become much more of a rotation as the season goes on. Ronnie Bell, Chris Conley, Jacob Coing, I don't know what their roles will necessarily become here. Very situational as the season goes on, as Ricky Pearsall gets back out there. But I really like that combination of 4 guys, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to see it probably until about halfway through the year. But that is also going to be something where there will be a new wrinkle likely in this offense that opposing defenses won't be ready for, and that's them coming out and just spreading it out. Ayuk, Samuel, Jennings, Pearsall, and then McCaffrey or Kittle or whoever in this spread offense that they can bring out there. And then it's just, read the defense from left to right, Brock, and throw it to whoever's open first. I think that opens up tremendous opportunities. And going back to the tight end there, George Kittle, he's my number 2 tight end in the league here as a receiving threat, just behind Travis Kelce. I would argue as an overall tight end, when you incorporate his ability in the run game as a blocker, I'm okay with people saying he's the best tight end in the league overall, because he is a great blocking tight end. He plays aggressively, he plays smart, and again, he understands how to use himself in the scheme of the run game to make himself super effective. I have Kyle Juszczyk written there. He's definitely more of a fullback, but you'll see him play like an offline tight end, do a little bit of motion as well, and actually split out, make some catches. So he is sort of become more of a hybrid player. And again, another guy who's a perfect fit for this style of offense. Talk about Alec Ingold being a perfect fit in Miami. Kyle Juszczyk is a better version of Alec Ingold, and has really excelled since coming over and being a part of the Shanahan style offense here. Eric Sobert is going to be your straight up backup tight end. Jake Tungs is going to be out there as a blocker as well. But Kittle, man, talk about a guy who plays with passion, who plays with reckless abandon. He's almost like Gronk-esque in his in his like, what is it called? Like his sound bites and stuff, and just when you get him mic'd up on the field, just the way that he talks, the way that he acts, he's all goofy and stuff, but he is equally dangerous and is regularly just destroying guys on the opposing defense and taking great pride in being a blocker despite being a really elite level receiver, obviously, which is a rare thing to find in any player, especially one where they are definitely skilled enough to get all the glory of an offensive production week to week. For him to just settle in some games, now it doesn't happen all that often, but there'll be some games where he's not producing statistically, but he's out there smiling and laughing because he is mauling linebackers in the run game in ways that doesn't get talked about enough. You can go and you can look up some of the clips of that. It is an invaluable player to have. And this is another thing that I'm talking about, where Shanahan went out and got, we talked about this with the coaches, got the perfect coaches for his scheme. He's just been turning out offensive coordinators and head coaches everywhere. He's found these great players. George Kittle, not a first-round pick. Kyle Juszczyk, a straight-up fullback from Baltimore. And he turned them into probably the best fullback in the league, arguably the best tight end in the league, by identifying their skill set and understanding they were perfect for his offense, and then allowed them to grow within the offense to become these types of quality players. Same thing can be said about Debo. Same thing can be said about Ayuk. Same thing can be said about Christian McCaffrey, even though Christian McCaffrey was already there as a receiving back. For him to excel the way that he did as a running back can't be understated, and that's what Shanahan did so well. And that's why you look at these grades and you look at these rankings. We've had tied for 14th quarterback, and then number 1 running back, rush threat, number 1 receiving back, 5th wide receivers, 2nd tight ends. Is there any team in the league that can claim to have a better group of weapons than this? And then you wonder why they're perennially contenders, and why Kyle Shanahan is able to come out, be so incredibly creative, being able to spread the ball around so effortlessly with the offense, and why Brock Purdy's job as a quarterback is so incredibly, I don't want to say it's easy, but I'm going to say it's easy. When you have all this and the system is just has molded with these players and these weapons so perfectly, that it's amazing. It's amazing to see, and it makes them so exciting to think about watching. Now let's get to the really only questionable part of this team on the offensive side of the ball, and that's their offensive line. We'll start with pass blocking. They're 16th. Trent Williams, elite level blocking pass blocker at left tackle, just got an extension. I think he just sort of held out, did the Michael Strahan, didn't want to go to training camp. Shout out to him for that. You're 12, 13, 14 years into your career. Why would you want to go to training camp? Who cares? You're an elite level player at your position. You don't need training camp. Just amazing. Aaron Banks. I'll talk about Banks and McKivitz and Brendel sort of all in one here. Not the most overly pure, talented players, at least in pass blocking. Brendel's a great run blocking center, and we'll get to that. But specifically McKivitz and Aaron Banks, they're not really great. I don't know if they're starters on too many other teams in the league. But between Shanahan and Forrester, they found these guys and plugged them in, and they have fit this offensive line extremely well, which is something I know with Aaron Banks in particular, a lot of people weren't anticipating. He was taken a lot higher than people thought. And based upon this Shanahan zone scheme they like to run, he didn't really seem like he fit. And they just put him out there, let him get some reps, put him through a couple training camps, and he's established himself as a pretty key piece to this offensive line in terms of his performances. Now, it helps that John Feliciano is also out. I don't know that if that opens up more opportunities for him or for the rookie Dominic Puny from Kansas to become the starting right guard, who I really like. Dominic Puny coming out. I thought that was a really good pick. I thought it was a sneaky good pick to get him. His tackle and guard flexibility, I think, was something that really was appealing. And to just allow him to have the opportunity to become one of the best 5 guys, and then plug him in at whatever spot was needed him to be at. Colton McKivitz, he's another one like Aaron Banks. It's just like, it only makes sense here on the 49ers. It doesn't make, I wouldn't be excited if my team signed Colton McKivitz in free agency. But I'm excited to see him out here with this team because of how he fits into the scheme and the scheme they want to run. And this is all they really need to be when you look at the weapons we just covered. As long as they're about the 16th, maybe 12th to 16th best pass blocking offensive line, how incredibly dangerous is this passing offense going to be? It's just an elite level group here. Then you get to some of the depth, and Jalen Moore is a really good swing tackle for their depth here. Don't really have a whole lot else going on. Spencer Burford has some starting experience. He did lose his starting job to the rookie Puny here. And I think the pass blocking has a lot to do with it. I think run blocking Burford is okay as well, but I think the pass blocking really stood out, and it helped raise up that group quite a bit. I think that really helps him out. Ben Barch has some experience as well. Nick Zell. Zach Elge is your backup center. Brandon Parker, backup right tackle. They pretty much got a backup for each position. When Ricky Pearsall gets taken off the pup, I would expect one of these linemen to be dropped to make that roster space. Maybe even one of the linebackers. They are carrying a lot of linebackers as well, but I think they're carrying those linebackers until Dre Greenlaw comes off the pup. We'll get to that. But I do like Jalen Moore as a backup. I think Jalen Moore is one of those sneaky, great backups, almost like what Baltimore has in Patrick McCarry, where he's really, he's a great backup in both aspects, where you won't be in complete dire straits if he has to come in for a couple games throughout the year at one of your tackle spots. You get to the run blocking, and they're second in the league in run blocking. Jake Brendel's great. Aaron Banks plays very serviceably. Colton McKivitz, again, very serviceable. Starter quality. I would say. Dominic Puny is another one. If you look at what he did in college, he can be a good run blocker as well. The elite one is Trent Williams, who gets that 95 grade to go along with his 90 grade as a pass blocker. It's very rare that you have a tackle who's elite at pass blocking, but then somehow better at run blocking. They're usually one or the other. There's very few guys in the league that are elite at both. And the only one truly that comes to mind that's elite at both is Trent Williams. Now, I would look for Penei Sewell. If he can improve in pass blocking, he would enter that conversation as well. Christian Darrisaw, I think, is another one you can talk about in that vein. But Trent Williams, man, what? And at his age, to still be this great athlete in the open field, to pull out and be like a lead blocker for McCaffrey or for Debo on end arounds and all that. You would think he's only been in the league for 5 years, the way that he runs around out there with such speed and athleticism and power, just, destroying linebackers and flattening defensive backs and being able to keep up with the play and not get caught, slowing down the progression of the play behind him. That's another thing that you really can see with his game, that you'll regularly see offensive linemen, they'll get out in the open field, they'll do some stuff, but they'll make a block, but they'll almost kind of be in the way at the same time and maybe slow down the back or whoever the ball carrier is and prevents, an even bigger play from happening. Trent Williams is not in the way at all. He is out there as fast as anyone, as strong as anyone, and it cannot be understated how important he is to this offense and to how well this offense produces. And he really helps carterize the entire offensive line. Jake Brendel, great elite level, almost run blocking ability, which again makes him the perfect fit in this offense. And for him to repeat the quality that he was able to put out last year is going to be something to watch. And you're hoping Dominic Puny can step up his game and maybe he becomes your third best offensive lineman, and that's going to be significant in also raising up the overall quality of the offensive line. We talked about some of the depth before. Burford gets a significant boost as a run blocker. Brandon Parker sort of hovers around that low end backup. And then Jalen Moore is up there, great quality. You could argue that Jalen Moore overall is a better player than Colton McKivitz. But I think Jalen Moore is not nearly as comfortable at the right tackle spot as McKivitz is. I think that's why he also doesn't get the starting job over him. Playing left tackle to right tackle, people compare it to wiping with your left hand, which even when you get in your stance, do some kickoffs as just a layman in your living room, you can see there is a motion difference and there's a feel that is much different when you switch from side to side. So you just go with the more traditional right tackle there, and then Jalen Moore gets to be your backup role, which I think is what he's really best served at here. But again, another truly great offensive line. So the quality is unbelievable. And no, your eyes are not deceiving you here. This is my number one offense in the league, my number one pass offense, and my number one rush offense. It's nearly impossible for me to not rank them as the number one pass offense because their offensive line is good and they have the best group of weapons and they have a quarterback who's not going to turn the ball over and is not afraid to push the ball down the field when necessary. Can't have them anything less than the best running offense. They have the best running back in the league. They have the best blocking tight end in the league. They have the second best offensive line for run blocking in the entire league. And they got aggressive blocking receivers as well. They got the best fullback in the league in Kyle Juszczyk. So they have all the bodies. I would love to hear people argue that they aren't the best and the reasons why that is. When you take into account the entirety of the 11 guys that are going to be on the field every drive on Sundays. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball now, and we'll start with the edge room. And their edge rushers, they have the 12th best group here. Arguably the number 1 edge rusher in the league, but not much in terms of a complement on the other side. They're not exactly the Cleveland Browns in terms of getting a complement for their number 1 guy. They thought they had it in Chase Young. I mean, you know my opinions about Chase Young. Go and watch my Saints video. Bosa is truly great, and I think they've sort of thrown a more rotational style now at him. They did invest in Drake Jackson in the draft. It hasn't really worked out. He's currently on the PUP list, I believe. So they're waiting for him to come back, just hoping that maybe he can become something. But they did bring in Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd, 2 veterans in free agency. You're going to see a lot of Leonard Floyd on these pure passing downs. That's really just always been what his strengths are. He's never really lived up to that top 10 draft pick status that he was. I really like Robert Beal on early downs. You know, Yetur Gross-Matos is going to get opportunities as well. I think he may end up getting a higher snap count than Leonard Floyd just because you're going to see him on early downs. They are 18th as an edge group on early downs, like against the run. And I think Robert Beal will be somebody you'll see rotate in for Nick Bosa as well when you want to get him off the field. But I think Bosa is going to be eating up a significant percentage of the snaps, like the highest number by far. And then you'll see, I think, Gross-Matos probably get the number 2 because he's going to also be a rotational guy for Leonard Floyd against just pure pass rushing. So you'll see probably Leonard Floyd mostly on third downs and probably only on third downs, while Gross-Matos and Robert Beal eat up, you know, first and second down snaps for most of the season, with Gross-Matos, I think, eating up more than Robert Beal does. And then when Drake Jackson is able to come back, it'll be interesting to see if he even can find his way onto the field, because he hasn't really shown anything in terms of his ability to be even a great pass rusher, let alone playing on early downs against the run. Nick Bosa has just been a wrecking machine since coming into the league. And he's improved every year, even though he doesn't rank that high as a run supporter and as a run defender. This is still a good grade for him to have as a run defender. He's not exactly, you know, terrible at the job. I wouldn't put him as a top 10 run defender, maybe not necessarily as an edge player, but he's probably number 2, number 3 at worst as an edge rusher. And I think that is truly where his grade is important, because he is of the elite in that sense. So not having him as a truly great edge, as a truly great run defender is not that big of a deal. I think the lack of having somebody who is that could hurt them a little bit. I think it does hurt the overall front four in terms of its quality against the run, because as interior rushers, Javon Hargrave and Malik Collins are going to be your 1-2 punch there. They're tied for 7th in the league as interior pass rushers. Javon Hargrave, a truly elite interior pass rusher. You really love him. Malik Collins is going to be almost like your nose tackle, I would guess, for this season. They did just restructure his deal, so he's going to be there for a bit. Where you have cause for concern with this interior group, as with the edge group, is they drop down to being tied for 28th as run defenders. Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave aren't exactly great run defenders, and that is an issue because they're also the 2 best at it. And Malik Collins is not a starting quality run defender. Javon Hargrave is a good number 2. You know, he was a good complement to Eric Armstead when he was there. But now that Armstead's gone, he's now your 3 down interior defensive lineman. You are kind of hoping that you get somebody to step up significantly as the nose tackle next to him. Whether it's Malik Collins or Jordan Elliott or Kevin Givens, they didn't keep a lot of interior defensive linemen when forming their 53-man roster. So the ability of this front four against the run has significant concerns to them, while as just pure pass rushers, it's tough to find a group that's going to be much better than them when you have these pocket collapsing athletes coming up in those A and B gaps like Hargrave, for example, and then Nick Bosa just tearing off the outside. Even Gross Matos can work that power game on the opposite side of him, and really they can mix and match a lot of things. It'll be interesting to see how Sorensen and Staley utilize this front four and utilize a rotation outside of Bosa and Hargrave to optimize the performance of this front four. The run is the concern. They're not in the top 20 for defensive line run defense. And that could rear its ugly head at some point during the season. Luckily, they have such a high-powered offense where they're going to be probably at the worst case, having to play an offense, playing against teams offensively that are going to have to be throwing the ball a lot, which plays into their strengths. Moving on to the linebackers now, and this is a difficult group to grade. We'll start with the pass coverage. They're second in the league. I do have Greenlaw listed there. He is currently on the PUP list, so he's probably going to miss the first couple games of the year. But when he comes in, they're a great linebacking group, and I would expect them not to necessarily rush him back. They did sign Devondre Campbell in free agency. They did bring in rookie Tatum Bethune to sort of be the replacement guys for him in the meantime. And I think that as a combination, especially Devondre Campbell's got that experience, I think they can replace him in a way where you won't see a significant drop-off in quality. I think it puts a lot more pressure on Fred Warner, but Fred Warner is probably the best linebacker in the league. So I wouldn't be overly concerned about this linebacker group. When Dre Greenlaw comes back, I expect him to get right back to this level here. And I don't expect him to be out all that long. I know he popped the Achilles in the Super Bowl, but that was in February. So February, March, April, May, June, July, August. By the end of September, that'll be like 8-9 months. So I expect him to be back early October and this group to get right back to being truly great. One of the best combinations, if not the best combination, because when you look at them against the run, Fred Warner takes a tremendous step up, goes to that 91 grade, and Greenlaw does drop, but Devondre Campbell and him are almost the exact same in terms of their quality they bring against the run. So this tied for fifth grade against the run is going to very much sustain even while Dre Greenlaw is out, which is an important detail I think that we need to include in this. I would say for the first couple weeks, the first month of the year, they'll probably be, maybe the 7th to 10th best linebacker group in pass coverage. And then when Greenlaw comes back, this is what they'll jump to number 2 for the majority of the season. This is going to stand. So it's really the best linebacking group overall in the league. I don't really know how Tatum Bethune is going to fit. He's just going to be a rotational guy. How they kept this many linebackers is also questionable. I think it's going to be mostly them playing Devondre Campbell in substitution of Dre Greenlaw and then trying to find between those 4 guys 1 or 2 that can be a rotational piece throughout games until Dre Greenlaw is able to come back, and then that workload will be significantly dialed back. Campbell will become the rotational piece, and then they'll settle into being the 2 quality stars that they are. Fred Warner, let's talk about him for a second here. Talk about him in coverage first. He plays great man coverage. He plays very smart in zones. He's able to identify. Him and Roquan Smith have like these abilities as coverage linebackers where they know exactly where all the soft zones are. They understand the route combinations they're going to be facing, particularly between the hashes where a lot of their action is going to live. in a game anyway. But Fred Warner is also capable of running him out into a zone in the flats out wide. He's got that great athleticism, so that does open up the playbook a bit and open up the creativity for the defensive coordinator, the defensive coaches on this team. But I do expect, obviously, I don't expect them to do that all that often because of how great he is against the run. You want to keep him between the tackles as much as possible because he's going to fill every gap with tremendous speed, aggression, and more importantly than that, elite level anticipation. His ability to predict pre-snap and then to immediately execute post-snap and to adjust on the fly on a dime post-snap to the run game is amongst some of the best you could ever see ever. Especially with how sophisticated offenses are, he is seemingly always one step ahead of the opposing offense. He is one step ahead the way that you would see like Peyton Manning be one step ahead of the opposing defense. You know, it's almost like Ed Reed became a linebacker and seeing him just know where everything is happening at all times, know exactly what play is called by the opposing offense before they even break the huddle. It can't be understated how great his development was, and a lot of credit goes to Saleh and a lot of credit goes to DeMeco Ryans for continuously getting him to that level and really creating a Hall of Fame quality linebacker. Now, he needs more longevity in there, but your defense is always going to be very disciplined, very well run, and very much ahead of the game, so to speak, as long as Fred Warner is on the field directing everybody around. All you need to do is open up your damn ears, and Fred Warner is going to tell you exactly what the offense is doing, so you're going to know exactly what to do in your role on that particular play. Moving on now to the defensive backs, and we'll start with the corners. It's the sixth best corner group for me. Ambry Thomas is on the IR, so it does hurt the depth a little bit. I really like them bringing in Renardo Green, the rookie. I expect him to be a nice little rotational piece there. We'll start with Charvarius Ward, who true number one corner, was great for Kansas City, but took a tremendous leap to that upper crust, that upper tier when he came over to San Francisco. You know, does fall under the radar a lot just because of having guys like Warner and Bosa and Hargrave, and they had Armstead there as well. There's so many other players on this team that have all this high profile on the defensive side of the ball, even the guys on the offensive side of the ball, that he's almost forgotten. If he was on any other team in the league, you know, I think they'd be talking about him the way they talk about guys like Patrick Surtain. You know, Patrick Surtain's on a team where there's really nobody else to talk about but him. Charvarius Ward is like the 10th most important guy on this team, which is insane to think about because look at how high his grade is. He's like a top 7 cornerback in the NFL probably, the way that he's developed lately. Diamador Lenore is a great compliment to him as well. He has been very, very good since coming into the league playing opposite of Ward. Him and Ambry Thomas came to the league together, and they immediately were thrust into the fire, and they lived up to the moment really well. And I like Diamador Lenoir as that number 2 corner on the team. They also brought in Isaac Yadam, who very quietly had a tremendous season last year. And I would look for him to come in being a number 3 corner on this team and playing in a very ideal situation where there's so many moving parts and there's so many great players around him. He's going to have an opportunity to really repeat that and make himself a lot of money potentially in the next couple of years. Talk about a late bloomer, you know, playing on under a really great defensive staff the way that he did last season, to now make this shift onto this well-established defense that has a lot of returning players that are used to winning together, that have all this chemistry together. For him to get in there into those film rooms, into those practices, into those training camps, I would look for him to be like a sneaky great corner. You know how Deron Bland really snuck onto the scene there in Dallas sort of out of nowhere. because of how great everyone was around him, it allowed him to play super aggressive as a cornerback, and it led to him creating a lot of big plays and a lot of big turnovers. I'm not saying Isaac Adams is going to go out there and get 9 interceptions this year, but I wouldn't be shocked if he walks away with 5 or 6, just because of how great everything else is in front of him and how great someone like Charvarius Ward is and how very incredibly well you'll get play out of Diamador Lenore. That he's not going to have a lot of these opportunities and really be able to take advantage of them. You get to the safety group. Talona Hufanga is back. They are tied for 19th in safety coverage. They only kept 4 safeties. So I would expect there to be maybe some type of rotation from some of the corners, particularly Renardo Green. Maybe he becomes like another part of the safety rotation perhaps, as he's kind of lost here in this top 3. Especially when you got a veteran like Rocky Asin who's got all that experience as well. But Talona Hufanga burst onto the scene 2 years ago, I believe. Established himself as this, physical playmaking safety. Jair Brown is a really good complement for him in these pass coverage situations. I do question the ceiling of this group, but I don't think they necessarily have to have that high of a ceiling with how great everything is in front of them. I sort of look at it the same way I saw the Kansas City Chiefs corner safety group, or somewhere in that ilk, or like the Detroit Lions safety group more specifically. It's very similar in that sense where they have such great stuff going on in front of them that all you got to do is play extremely disciplined, play physical, and play instinctual on the back end, and play fast. And you're going to be a great addition to this defense, and you're not going to be in a position to ever hurt them, to ever hurt the defense, and ever hurt the production of the defense. You see their rookie Malik Mustafa. I really like him to come in and play as like an 8th man in the box, maybe get some dime linebacker play, especially with Drake Greenlaw out, like nickel linebacker play with Drake Greenlaw out, because he comes in and this is where he's really good. I think him and Hufanga, very similar players to one another. So I do feel like Malik Mustafa is almost going to be more of a backup early in the year, but I think he'll get more opportunities if they want to play bigger, more physical football from the safety spot. They are the 8th best DB run support group in the entire league. And Jair Brown is also a guy who is pretty serviceable in this role as like a backup, like a 3rd safety in DB run support. I think he'll get a lot of snaps because of that. I just wanted to make sure to feature Mustafa because I do think he could be utilized in the run game, in the run defense in particular, as a weapon for this team. But I do expect Hufanga and Jair Brown to get a majority of the snaps. They are the 2 best overall safeties on this team by far. Jair Brown's going to get a lot of that play in the deep center field, while Hufanga is going to be able to play like more of like a robber type role, running around closer to the line, playing within 15 yards of the line of scrimmage. Don't want to do the whole like, oh, he's Samoan and Polamalu was Samoan, but very similar in style. I think he could get to that type of playing style. He has the traits to do it. But if he ends up just being a poor man's Polamalu's a Hall of Fame safety. You can get to that poor man's Polamalu level. That's still top 10 safety in the league, probably by the end of it all, which is more than you could ask for out of this group, especially when you lost Jimmy Ward. So to find good complements in the back end to a really great cornerback group, it's important, and it's with Nick Sorensen, who's played defensive back when he was a player in the NFL. I think there's a special thing there that he can really bring to actually enhance this group maybe a little bit further. So this is my 5th ranked defense overall, 3rd pass defense, and 14th run defense, and that's really just based upon what the front four it looks like against the run right now. That is the only real weak spot of this defense, is the defensive line and run defense. So you're looking for somebody there outside of Bosa, really, and Javon Hargrave. You're looking for whoever that third person is going to be to step their game up to raise this group up into the top 10. So overall, this is my best team in the entire NFL going into the 2024 season. Tied for fourth in coaching, the best offense, and the fifth ranked defense. Just an amazing football team. And there it is. It's all over. It's all over. That was my number one team in the NFL for this 2024 Deep Dive Series, the 49ers. Are they going to win the Super Bowl despite being the best team? I don't know. We talked about what could be missing. You guys tell me what you think has been missing. Have they fixed what has been missing that has stopped them from winning the Super Bowl, particularly last year, despite having all this talent? Can Brock Purdy get to the next level? Can Kyle Shanahan elevate these guys to that championship winning team? It's going to be an interesting year to watch, guys, and I really appreciate you guys coming through for this video, the 31 other ones. You can watch any of the videos you missed either here or here on either side there. Man, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I can't wait to take a little bit of a break now from just turning out content over and over again. I appreciate you guys. I will see you guys with the next video next time.